for style and power fueled the fires of a national passion. Over the next 5 decades, young men and women came to the ice, whirling silver blades like paintbrushes, each generation bringing something wonderful. Strength, speed, grace, and almost superhuman power. And just as it seemed impossible to imagine they could go further, they launched themselves up like rockets to the stars. Ladies and gentlemen, Barbara Ann Scott.
Good evening. When I skated at the Olympics in San Moritz so many years ago, I never dreamed that I'd be followed by such a long line of remarkable Canadian skaters. We're truly one of the great skating nations, and I'm so honored to be a part of tonight's special celebration as we present some of the very best skating performances ever produced for television. It's nearly impossible to imagine that 50 years ago, there was no television in Canada. To see skaters perform, you had to put on your warmest clothes and head over to the arena for the annual carnival or touring ice show. It was a kind of magic that transformed the local hockey rink into an enchanted frozen stage. This wonderful old film is from one of the earliest skating events ever recorded in Canada. It's the Toronto Skating Club's annual carnival, and it was held at Maple Leaf Gardens in 1932.
In this country of skaters, the carnival represents the very height of figure skating form. The carnivals are becoming more and more popular year by year, and their color and pageantry form a fitting background for the performance of these great artists on ice.
The Canadian ice carnivals were a great family tradition. The shows carried right on into the 1940s and beyond. Every year, the productions and routines became bigger and more spectacular.
Thus, the new theatrical impresarios of the ice have transformed skating into a new and living form of expression, vivid and swift and colorful. Within 50 years, a great artistic triumph has been gained. Figure skating takes its place among the dramatic arts.
century, Axel Paulsen, Ulrich Salchow, and Alois Lutz invented single revolution jumps that were named in their honor. If cooler heads hadn't prevailed, the loop would have been called the Rittberger, after this man, Werner Rittberger. But over time, one revolution in the air has evolved into two, and now triples and quads. That standard was set back in 1988 at Worlds in Budapest, with the first quad ever completed in competition. It was a remarkable achievement by an amazing young man. Tonight, it's my great pleasure to introduce that young man. Ladies and gentlemen, Kurt Browning.
Skating has brought some incredibly special moments and memories into my life. But one of the very best is when I found myself personally connected to an incredible piece of figure skating history. It was a few years ago when I skated at the World Championships in Prague. I was following in the footsteps of one of my greatest heroes, Donald Jackson. 31 years before I won my gold medal at Prague, Donald Jackson stood in the very same arena and overcame enormous odds to win his title. It was one of the greatest performances of all time, and what happened that day made him a legend.
When he stepped on the ice for his free skate, he was trailing the hometown hero Karl Devin by a huge margin of 45 points. To quote one reporter that day, snowballs on a barbecue of better odds. But Don had a secret weapon, the triple Lutz, never seen in competition before. When the moment was right, he exploded off the ice. The crowd went nuts. Jackson was gunfighter fast that day, landing 22 jumps, an unprecedented performance that earned sixes. More than a trailblazer, that day Donald Jackson carved a superhighway for all of us. Don Jackson was the greatest free skater in the world, and that performance earned him the nickname King of Blades. The world of professional skating opened up its doors, and Don took star billing with Ice Falls, one of North America's most spectacular touring ice shows.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, our world champion, Donald Jackson.
Don Jackson was a phenomenal aerial act on ice. All over the world, audiences packed arenas to see him jump.
While the 60s belonged to Donald Jackson, the 70s brought a storm of creative energy that would change the sport forever. And at the eye of that storm, a Canadian original, Taller Cranston. He came on the scene like a bolt of lightning. But then, well, Taller always did know how to make an entrance.
Oh dear. I'm one card short of a full day. I'm not quite the silly. One wave short of a shipwreck. I'm not my usual top billy. I'm coming down with a fever. I'm ready out to sea.
As an Olympic and world medalist, Taller Cranston came to the ice with passion, originality, and something that up to that time hadn't been seen much in skating: real drama.
Oh dear.
Everything about Taller had flair. The stretch of his arms and body, his approach to music, and the way he lives every note of it, right down through his blades. In the 80s, he burst into the communication age like a meteor with a brilliant impact. through his creative energy into a string of hit television specials. Shows like Dreamweaver, Magic Planet, and The True Gift of Christmas. All of the specials were groundbreaking television, but the one that is most awarded and most remembered is Strawberry Ice. Strawberry Ice was a guided tour into the very heart of Toller Cranston's imagination. Always influenced by dance, he took the latest TV technology and used it as a background for his skating ballet. The special was so original and so ahead of its time that it changed the very concept of skating on television. Calgary in 1988, Toller returned to an Olympic set. This time he came not as a competitor, but as a skating legend. Performing with David Foster, it was a celebration of a skater who's continued to inspire and entertain audiences the world over.
That Skating returns with Elvis Stojko and Brian Orser.
The figure skater traces his icy figures with mathematical precision.
Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Jackson.
Elvis Stojko is a Canadian who's been an inspiration to people all over the world. Over the years of training and competitions, no matter how tough the going got, he fought back, always striving to be the best that he could be.
When I first saw Elvis, he was a kid skating at the cricket club. Even then, I was impressed with his focus, his determination, and his drive to win. That drive and hard work paid off with silver medals at Lillehammer and Nagano, 3 consecutive world championships, and his own show, the Elvis Tour of Champions. No mistake about it. Elvis is him. Elvis did his special, Elvis Incognito, he worked out this routine with longtime friend and mentor, Brian Orser. They were like two kids playing tag on a giant ice guitar. In one of the show's most touching performances, Elvis skated a tribute to one of his heroes, the great tenor Enrico Caruso.
Potenza della lirica, dove ogni dramma è un falso, e con un po' di trucco e con la mimica puoi diventare un altro.
Ma due occhi che ti guardano, così vicini e veri, ti fai scordare le parole, confondono i pensieri.
Così diventa tutto piccolo, anche le notti là in America. Ti volti e vedi la tua vita come la scia di un elmo.
Ma sì, è la vita che finisce, ma lui non ci pensò poi tanto, anzi si sentiva già felice e ricominciò il suo canto.
Te voglio bene assai, ma tanto bene sai.
È una catena ormai che scioglie il sangue di te bene. Te voglio bene, ma tanto bene. È una catena che scioglie il sangue di te
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Elvis Stojko.
I'll always have great memories of Brian Orser. We both called the same rink, Mariposa, home. I can remember standing and watching him practice. There he was, a world champion, a double Olympic medalist, one of the great true skaters of our time, right in front of me, sweating it out. He was an inspiration and living proof that anything was possible if you wanted it bad enough.
One of the things I always admired in Brian is how he handled himself on and off the ice. He always represented Canada with dignity and grace. Brian's first special was a reflection of real life. It was called Skating Free. His amateur days were over. He was finally free to skate the way he always wanted. What he chose was one of the most beautiful settings in the world, Lake Louise in the Canadian Rockies. Out on that big stretch of ice, he celebrated everything he knew and loved about skating. Embedded in the ice was a 25,000 square foot maple leaf, the size of a village. The lake was so big, a helicopter was needed to follow Brian from the air. It was a spectacular production and pure Brian Orser. Brian has skated some great roles. The Planets was a magnificent production set to the music of Gustav Holst. Brian skated the part of Mercury. His role as Escamillo, the bullfighter in the feature film Carmen on Ice, won Brian an Emmy for classical dance. In his award-winning special, Night Moves, Brian again played a role, this time a streetwise guy, skating an urban fantasy both on and off the ice. In fact, this special was the first to choreograph routines on rollerblades as well as ice skates.
I go up where the air is fresh and sweet. I get away from the hustling crowd and all that rat race noise down in the street. At night the stars put on a show for free. And darling, you can share it all with me. I keep telling you that right smack dab in the middle of town.
In his special, Blame It on the Blues, Brian celebrated his love of blues music in the company of a few good friends. One of the best moments came when Brian skated with a very unusual Paris partner in this number.
Shaking the blues away, unhappy news away. If you are blue, it's easy to shake off your care and trouble. Telling the blues to go, they may refuse to go, but as a rule they'll go if you'll shake them away. Do like I'm showing you, dancing to a Dixie melody. Shake your body so, to and fro, with every shake. Lucky break proving that there's a way to chase your cares away. If you are blue, it's easy to shake them away.
Orser can do anything on ice. He's elegant and stylish and a great showman. All of these qualities come together in one special performance that's close to Brian's heart. It's Neil Diamond's song, The Story of My Life. It was a favorite of Brian's mom, and when he skated it in Stars on Ice, he dedicated the performance to her.
You're the story of my life, and every word is true. Each chapter sings your name. Each page begins with you. It's the story of our times, and never letting go. If I die today, I wanted you to know. Share with me, care with me, stay and be near. And when it began, I'd lie awake every night, just knowing somewhere deep inside that our affair just might right. The story of my life, it's so very plain to read. It starts the day you came and ends the day you leave.
Pairs skating champions Barbara Underhill and Paul Martini when that skating continues.
Second, accuracy is essential.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Orser.
I've known Barbara Underhill and Paul Martini since we were just kids in junior. Years later, when they won gold at Worlds in 1984, it marked the end of their amateur career, but it was just the beginning of one of the most enduring pairs partnerships the world has known. Underhill and Martini brought a whole new man-woman sensuality and passion to the ice, and audiences loved it.
Over the years, Barbara and Paul's programs became classics the fans requested over and over again. Barbara and Paul made audiences gasp with the move they invented and called the leap of faith. The jump reflects the trust they have in each other. The leap of faith took on a special meaning when they marked 2 decades together with a television show. It was a celebration of a perfect partnership.
When Barb and Paul skated their last tour, they appeared at Maple Leaf Gardens in their hometown. It was an electric moment, wonderful and sad all at the same time. With the maturity and beauty unique to these two, Underhill and Martini gave a performance that no one will ever forget.
As the days go by, I keep thinking, when does it end? That it can't get much better, much longer. But it only gets better and stronger and deeper and nearer and simpler and freer and richer and clearer. And no, not a day goes by, not a blessed day, but you somewhere come into my life. And you don't go away, and I have to say, if you do, I'll die. I want day after day after day after day after day after day after day, till the days go by. Somewhere come into my life, and you don't go away, and I have to say, if you do, I'll die. I want day after day after day after day after day after day after day. Till the days go
Great Pairs champions of the past and performances by Orser and Eisler when that skating returns.
Deceptively simple, their wealth of talent hiding the unending practice hours necessary to achieve such artistry.
Ladies and gentlemen, Barbara Underhill and Paul Martini.
It's wonderful to have the opportunity tonight to salute some of the great pair skating teams of the past. Canada has a tradition that goes back over 50 years.
In 1948, when Barbara Ann Scott won gold in St. Moritz, Canada also brought home its first Olympic medal in pairs. It was a bronze medal, and it went to Suzanne Morrow and Wallace Distemeyer, who had an amazing array of double jumps, including a Lutz. They were also the first to perform the death spiral in much the same way that we do it today.
In 1954, Toronto's Frances Defoe and Norris Bowden became the first Canadian pair to win a world championship. They won again in 1955, and in 1956 they won silver at the Olympics in Cortina, Italy. Defoe and Bowden were great skaters, great artists, and great innovators, all in one team. They were one of the first pairs to bring true choreography to the ice, matching their moves to their music. When When Frances and Norris retired, Frances applied her knowledge of skating and her artistic gifts to a new career in design. She came to the CBC and for 4 decades designed the costumes for most of the major dance and skating productions. The extraordinary beauty and originality of her work brought Frances some of the world's most prestigious awards.
Bowden ushered in the golden age of Canadian pair skating. In the late 50s, the torch was passed to Barbara Wagner and Robert Paul. Almost unbeatable, they were world champions for 4 years running. And they were not only the first Canadian pair, but the first North American pair to win Olympic gold. Wagner and Paul were at the beginning of their professional careers in 1961. That was the year they starred in the CBC production, Planet Ice.
Announcing their Royal Majesties, the rulers of Planet Ice.
It was the first Canadian skating special.
The spectacular brother and sister team of Otto and Maria Jelinek took Canadian pair skating into the 60s, winning gold at Worlds in Prague in 1962. The Jelineks had real charisma and were incredibly popular. They were also great innovators, inventing and perfecting many moves, including this overhead lift. Pair skating didn't come to an end until after Innsbruck in 1964, when pairs team Debbie Wilkes and Guy Revelle won Olympic silver.
All through the years, every team has dreamed and worked to bring something new and original to the ice. The style, the lines, in fact, the whole idea of pairs has changed with each new generation of skaters.
In the 90s, it's bigger, higher, and faster than ever before. The team that has set the standard is an aerial act of the highest order, our friends Isabelle Brasseur and Lloyd Eisner. Barb and I have watched them turn incredible hard work into a world championship title and 2 Olympic medals. Along the way, they've perfected some of the most powerful lifts and throws in pair skating. And combined with a great sense of showmanship, the two always deliver what the crowd loves best.
No couple has more fun than Brasseur and Eisner. They're always right there in the moment and having a ball. Isabelle Brasseur has no fear of flying. Over the years, she's logged more airtime than most pilots. Being up there is a great feeling, and when you do it right, you can take the whole audience along for the ride.
Miss Otis regrets she's unable to lunch today. Madam,
Miss Otis regrets she's unable to lunch today. And she's sorry to be delayed. But last evening, the lovers lay she strayed. Madam, Miss Otis regrets she's unable to lunch today. When she woke up and found that her dream of love was gone, Madam, she ran to the man who had led her so far astray. And from under velvet gown, she drew a gun and shot her lover down. Madam, Miss Otis regrets she's unable to lunch today. When the mob came and got her and dragged her from the jail, Madam, they strung her up on the willow across the way. And the moment before she died, she lifted up her lovely head and cried, Madam, Miss Otis regrets she's unable to lunch. Miss Otis regrets she's unable to lunch today.
A look back at Canada's top women champions when that skating continued. Ladies and gentlemen, taller Cranston.
If what they said in the good old days was really true, and a glimpse of stocking is really quite shocking, what would they say about a glimpse of tights in the glare of hot lights? Well, if the skater were José Chouinard, they'd probably say, let the music play on.
Once in a while, audiences just fall in love. With José, it's easy to see why. She's beautiful, fragile, and totally electric all at the same time. In Kurt Browning's special, you must remember this: José was absolutely captivating.
Quand il me prend dans ses bras, il me parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rouge. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours, et ça me fait quelque chose.
José has a huge audience of devoted fans. Her performances in Stars and Ice are always crowd favorites.
At the turn of the century, women face one big problem with regard to skating: their clothing. Big heavy skirts, petticoats, layers made doing the smallest little spins and jumps seem like life-threatening adventures. It was a time that when a woman raised her petticoat, she lost her reputation, or better yet, she gained one.
But after the First World War, skirts went up and women were stepping out on the ice in record numbers. Canada boasted some fine champions. Women such as Constance Wilson Samuels, Cecil Smith, and Mary Rose Thacker, and waiting in the wings, a very young Barbara Ann Scott, already skating like a champ.
Barbara Ann Scott, at 11 years, is at the beginning of her career, yet already she has mastered the fine points of a technique undreamed of by our grandparents.
After the Second World War, a grown-up Barbara Ann went on to Europe and skated away with everything: Worlds, the Olympics, and everybody's heart. It was almost as though the sport never existed until Barbara Ann came along. She became our first true national celebrity. There were awards, keys to every city and small town in Canada, and in 1948, Barbara Ann had more parades than Santa Claus. In this famous little hat, and looking about as cheerful as a maple leaf, she was the finest ambassador Canada ever had. In those shining moments, Barbara Ann Scott took women's figure skating from 0 to 60, and the entire world turned out to express their love.
That face, that fabulous face, it shines, it glows, all over the place. Nowhere could these eyes behold a sight that could replace that face, that face, that face.
When Barbara Ann Scott turned pro, it took Canadian women's skating over 15 years to catch up. In the early 1960s, the elegant Wendy Greiner put Canada back in the medals when she won silver at the Worlds in Prague. Then came Petra Burka, the first woman since Barbara Ann to win gold at the Worlds. A technical powerhouse, Petra was the first woman to land a triple jump in competition. And then in the 1970s, along came Vancouver's Karen Magnuson. Karen skated into the history books with an Olympic silver medal in Sapporo and a gold at the Worlds in Bratislava in 1973.
Karen Magnuson had the same dreams and drive that all champions must have. But she had one quality that delighted audiences all over the world. The joy of skating seemed to bubble out in every one of her performances. It is my pleasure to introduce my very good friend, Karen Magnuson.
In spite of all the time that's passed since my performance at Worlds, when I watched Elizabeth Manley skate at the '88 Calgary Olympics, the thrill of it all came right back to me. No matter how many times you imagine it, if you're lucky enough to win, the experience is just overwhelming. Elizabeth put every ounce of her being into a brilliant silver medal moment for Canada. Thousands of fans screamed themselves hoarse as Liz headed into the last moments of her program. They knew she'd just skated her way into Olympic history. After she conquered Calgary, Elizabeth Manley turned her attention to television. Her CBC specials borrowed from the classic children's stories and showed that Liz had a flair for acting as well as skating.
Though she can't fetch my slippers or swim and flap her flippers, as a pet you can bet she's a wow.
to the Beanstalk was tailor-made for Manley's dazzling style. In the show, she skated the role of Jack Jr. No girl named Jack was ever more enchanting.
Now that you're facing a giant, afraid of the battle is strong. No time to be meek or compliant. Your lion must roar. You've gotta have guts, no ifs, ands, or buts, or someone you love will be gone. And courage will be hard to come by.
And now, the star of our trial, Red Riding Hood!
The trial of Red Riding Hood brought Liz together with a stellar cast of skaters and actors. Together, they created some delightful TV moments.
Spreading a little sunshine, bringing a little cheer into the hearts of loved ones or anyone else who's near. Focusing on the bright side, showing my joie de vivre. Everyone's on the right side of a happy little person like me. Ooh-wee!
Liz Manley has always skated from the heart. She did it as a child and as an amateur, and she's delivered the same intensity as a professional and one of Canada's best-loved skaters.
Ice dancers Wilson and McCall, the Ducheneys, and Bourne and Kratz, when that skating continues. Once again, Brian Orser.
Tracy Wilson and Rob McCall were a team that hit their stride right at the time ice dancing was coming of age. Their footwork was spectacular, their unity was beautiful, but best of all, they had wonderful personality and charm. All in all, they were an irresistible combination. When they skated in Calgary in 1988, they became the first Canadians ever to win an Olympic medal in dance. They were a perfect match, passionate and connected. Tracy and Rob were in such superb control that they made you wonder if their minds were somehow joined together. Everywhere in the world, they found fans who adored them. And in 1989, Tracy and Rob won the World Professional Championship with this performance. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Tracy Wilson.
Ice dancing, for all its beauty, is the most regulated discipline in skating. So being creative or innovative is always risky, but it's also what makes ice dancing so exciting. When it comes to taking risks, a brother and sister team from Quebec is right out there on the edge. They're Isabelle and Paul Duchesne, and on the ice, they're magic. In their competitive days, Isabelle and Paul stunned the audiences and judges alike with their original and controversial programs. Their music didn't come from the dance hall, but from the jungle. It was sensuous and rhythmic, and not your standard choice for the world of ice dance. Their moves were raw and unconventional. Their costumes gave the judges migraines. The fans couldn't get enough. At the 1991 Worlds, the Duchesnes skated to the music from the movie Missing, a tale of political oppression in South America. Everything about the piece was revolutionary. The crowd loved them, and the judges responded with marks that gave the Duchesnes the gold. Isabelle and Paul Duchesne were finally free to skate the way they had always wanted. As professionals, one of their most remarkable performances came when they starred in the special The Planets. It was dance that left the rules behind, magnificently.
But skating continues.
As recently as 1895, the Toronto Skating Club was organized, and at that time, only 3 couples knew how to skate the wall.
Once again, Tracy Wilson.
I feel lucky that over the years, I've been able to stay close to the sport of ice dance. I've also had the pleasure of watching young Canadians Shaylin Bourne and Victor Kratz blossom into truly amazing performers. Shaylin and Victor have taken everything about ice dancing and honed it down to the essentials. Pure skating. Part of what makes them so unique are the edges and the feather-light touch on the ice. So smooth, it's as though they're skating on silk. Their trademark, hydroblading, with edges so deep and bodies so melded together, they look like a work of art, moving at the speed of light.
Gonna look back in vain. See you standing there when all that remains is just an empty chair. And now that you're gone, I can't cry hard enough. No, I can't cry hard enough for you to hear me now. There it goes, up in the sky. There it goes, beyond the clouds, for no reason why. I can't cry hard enough. No, I can't cry hard enough for you to hear me now.
There's a quality to Shaylin and Victor that I just love. They've got style and beauty. She looks like Grace Kelly, and he, the consummate leading man. Elvis Stojko must have seen those qualities when he asked them to skate to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire on his special Elvis Incognito.
Be a millionaire. I don't. With flashy flunkies everywhere. I don't. Who wants the bother of a country estate? Country estate is something I'd hate. Who wants a fancy foreign car? I don't. Who wants to tire of caviar? I don't. And who wants a marble swimming pool too? I don't. And I don't, 'cause all I want is you.
Bourne and Kratz have a great sense of fun. They love to surprise an audience, and it shows in every program they create. When they took the high-energy Celtic stepping of river dance and adapted it to the ice, the result was spectacular. Once again, here's Kurt Browning.
Gary Beacom is one of my favorite skaters and a total maverick. He's a one-man band who usually creates his own costumes and his own choreography. Some of the strangest stuff I've ever seen. Now, most of the time, I think Gary's a creative genius. Sometimes, I just think he's mad as a hatter.
Gary's like a phantom. He reinvents himself every time he skates. Gary Beacom is as unique as a fingerprint. Unpredictable, undefinable. He's like a performance artist, always improvising and experimenting. Put this together with a truly bizarre sense of humor, and you get nights like this, when Gary wows the crowd looking just like Jack Nicholson on ice.
If you want a lover, I'll do anything you ask. Another kind of love, I'll wear a mask for you. If you want a partner, take my hand, or if you want to strike me down in anger, here I stand, I'm your man. If you want a boxer, I will step into the ring for you. And if you want a doctor, I'll examine every inch of you. If you want a driver, Cranston, or if you want to take me for a ride, you know you can. I'm your man.
Two people who rocked the house for years in Stars on Ice are Christine Huff and Doug Ledre, better known at the rink as Tuffy and Doug. They've always been great skaters. And I can remember how cool they were when they won their Canadian title. But when they turned pro, man, they were hot.
When we cast You Must Remember This, we wanted to do a number called The Big Melt, a 40s film noir detective story. It was easy to imagine Doug as Mr. Big and Tuffy as the sexy femme fatale. Huff and Ledre have a style and an appeal that's totally their own. They can skate anything and make the hair on your neck stand on end.
skating returns with Barbara Ann Scott and Sandra Bezic.
The stage review are captured and set to music as the steel of 100 skates flashes over the glassy ice.
Once again, Barbara Ann Scott.
One of the most important relationships is the one between the choreographer and the skater. Choreographers do more than just stage the performances. Good ones often select the music, work out the costumes, and even the lighting looks. Sandra Bezic does all these things and more. In fact, she's one of the top skating choreographers of all time. When Brian Orser skated with the alligator in Shakin' the Blues Away, he was actually skating with Sandra, at least until the computer animators got hold of her. Sandra's work with Stars on Ice has made it one of the most popular and preeminent tours in the world. She's worked with almost every major skating star and created works so original and compelling that she's changed the whole concept of performance on ice. Sandra's creative instincts come from experience. She and brother Val Bezic were 5-time Canadian pairs champions.
Look at that, one hand left.
The Bezics were elegant and sophisticated. They brought a kind of flawless grace and unity to the ice. This performance from Taller Cranston's Strawberry Ice is a classic. Injury ended the Bezics pair's career, but with Sandra's creative drive and love of skating, nothing could keep her off the ice, a fact for which skaters around the world are truly grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, Sandra Bezic.
No one is more challenging to work with than Kurt Browning. That's because he's an extraordinary talent. He can do anything. He's a natural athlete and a gifted showman. He charms the audience the moment he steps on the ice. Kurt's won 4 world championships, the last one in Prague in 1993. It was there that he first skated the role of Rick from the movie Casablanca.
Play it once, Sam, for all time's sake.
Showcasing his unique ability to act on the ice, this is the program that set the elegant and dramatic tone of his professional career. When Kurt shot his first television special, he went home to the family ranch just outside Caroline, Alberta. Tall in the Saddle took Kurt back to the frozen lakes where he first learned to love skating. Saddle was also one of the first introductions to some incredible Browning clowning.
Look out for the horns on that bull there, Kurt.
Holy, you know what these horns remind me of? A politician's speech.
How do those bull's horns remind you of a politician's speech?
There's a point over there.
A point over there.
Yep, and a point over there.
A point over there.
And a lot of bull in the middle.
And a lot of bull in the middle.
I did a riddle, my baby's okay. Ask me a riddle, and what she say? Sit at the middle and ready for love.
For Kurt's second special, You Must Remember This, we took one of Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor's classic MGM dance routines from the movie Singing in the Rain, and along with young friend Ben Ferreira, the two adapted Fit as a Fiddle for the ice.
Audiences everywhere adored us.
Kurt has an unlimited range. He's an athlete, he's an artist, he's a leading man, and he's a comic.
She's hot to go, she's ready. She's hot to go right now. She's hot to go, you got to know it's hot to do.
That wouldn't make you a shallow person, would it?
Here I am. Yes, it's me. Take my hand, and you'll see. Here I am. Yes, it's true. All I want, girl, is you.
Just when I think Kurt couldn't possibly do anything better, he amazes me all over again.
Ow, she's a bread. Ow. She's mighty, mighty. Just letting it all hang out. Ow, she's a bread. Ow. I like lady stack, matter of fact. Ain't holding nothing back. Ow, she's a break. House. Yeah, she's mighty, mighty. Just letting it all hang out. Ow, a break. House. Yeah, she's the one, the only one, built like an Amazon. Yeah, break, 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 ow, break, break.
As a child, Kurt loved to watch old movies with his mom. So adapting movie characters and putting them on the ice was a natural fit when we began working on You Must Remember This. The special gave Kurt an opportunity to salute one of his favorite dancers. Gene Kelly made the movie Singing in the Rain in 1955. Who would have imagined the impact it would make on a kid from Caroline, and that 40 years later, we would recreate the scene on the ice?
I'm singing and dancing in the rain. Singing in the rain.
That's Skating Returns with Barbara and Scott.
Has been a very special evening for me. I hope you've enjoyed it too. For all our skaters, past and present, who've graced this program with wonderful performances, I thank you, and good night.